Little over 15 minutes to the closing bell. Remember when you were a kid, you made a promise, but if you had your hand behind your back and you were doing this, well, you didn't have to keep it. Someone should remind the world that the Saudis and the Russians sometimes do that when they make promises to cut production regarding oil. Oil trading higher. We're going to invite into the stream Dan Dicker, the Energy World founder, and also the author of Turning Oil Green. I wanted to ask you, are we near peak oil? Remember those days? Let's keep it simple. What is going on with oil?
Which peak are we talking about, Adam? Are we talking about peak demand or peak supply? Because, both have been talked about so much. It used to be all about peak supply, and now it's all about peak demand. I suppose you're referring to peak demand at this point, right?
Well, I'm referring to the fact that shouldn't the price of oil be coming down if the dollar is gaining strength?
A little bit. I think that there's something in there, but I think there's more going on in the oil market than simply the dollar. And I think the most important factor right now is that the Saudis surprised everyone. Not me, but surprised everyone else, let's say, in retaining that 1 million barrel a day unilateral cut that they put in place in December at the last meeting, 5 or 6 days ago. And I think that has been the driving force to continue to see oil prices stay at these very high levels, despite the fact that you're right. They've been on quite a run for three months now and are due to take a breath.
Dan, I got to ask you about your most recent blog post. I was reading that, and the first line in it says, "This is the most interesting time in the markets for me as a 35-year oil veteran." This carries some weight coming from a guy who's been in the business now for some time. What makes you say that? What's so interesting about right now?
Well, Sean, it's kind of a sarcastic comment, because for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been very tough to be an oil guy, as you know. I mean, the markets have been all about tech and all about growth, and very little about value and very little about commodities. I mean, the commodities have been on the bottom rung just about every year since, 2013 or so, in terms of alpha, in terms of gains. And, that gets pretty frustrating after a while. So now we're seeing, last to first kind of move that looks like it's got some staying power. And for the first time in a very long time in my life, I'd be a little bit frightened if the vast majority of my investments were in Tesla and Xilinx and AMD and, what have you. But I think you'd sleep quite well at night right now if you had, nice 6% dividends plus, the way that the stocks are moving in something like Exxon or Shell or BP, or even some, even wider commodity stocks like the coppers or Freeport, something like that. So, last to first. And that's why it's become so interesting. The bad becomes the good. And nowhere have you seen that enormously like in oil stocks since the start of the year.
Or the old movie Good, Bad, and Ugly, because when the oil companies were cutting dividends and we saw oil crash, a lot of people were saying, well, that's the end of that. But let me ask you this. At the end of that blog, you quote one fund manager who said, if you're not long energy stocks now, you never will be. There's still a long way to go with traditional oil, is there not? I mean, the world still needs gas. The world still needs oil. We're not going to be solar-powered EV car driving folk for another, on a global scale, 20, 30 years at least, right?
I am moderating on Friday. I am moderating a panel at the MIT Energy Conference. And it is the lone panel out of, a dozen or so that features oil company execs. All the rest is green stuff. And, that gives you an idea of just how poorly oil stocks are viewed by the public and by the marketplace. But of course, you're right. There's nothing that's going to make oil and gas not be the preeminent source of energy, at least until 2040. And you'll never see the sustainable energy, renewable energy, as much as we'd like to, take over the majority of the global energy portfolio until at least then, if not longer. And it's surprising to me, I guess it's not surprising to me, but it creates an opportunity, let's say, for investors who realize that a lot of what's being talked about in the green space, as much as we'd like it to be moving more quickly, is a lot of hype. and oil stocks have been ignored. And at the prices that they were sitting at the start of 21, they made for a tremendous opportunity, which, by the way, I brought to you several times during late 2020 and into the early parts of 21. And I don't think it's over yet. I don't think it's over yet by a long shot.
Dan, I'll bet you those oil executives who are going to be on your panel in junior high were the guys who are carrying briefcases and had pocket protectors, at least how the world's treating them now. Dan Dicker, the Energy World.
They're a lot richer than you and me, Adam, that's for sure.
Yes, that's what usually happens to those guys who are 13 and 14 and carry briefcases in junior high.